Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LPFM.
Connecting Highline and our region.
History, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary pop culture.
We collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people.
We want to embrace our differences and similarities.
We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LPFM.
Hi, everyone. This is Nancy from the Highline Heritage Museum, and welcome back. Today, we have a wonderful human being that I just cannot wait for you to get to know her a little bit more. And if you don't know who she is, this is a great introduction. I've been touched by her work. I've been exposed by her work, and it's just, I hope that people get curious after this interview. So, okay, let's see who she is, and trying to dive into more of the work that she does. And so, why are we doing this? I'm really liking this new description. Why not? Why not? Why not to do it? Why not to connect with each other, connect to what is around us? We co-share the same land, and the idea of being able to, hey, who is around us is something that I think is crucial and important for all of us. And so thank you for joining us tonight. Claudia, are you ready? Oh, no, before that, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Claudia, for allowing us to do this with you. And it's just a joy. I'm just hope that people can see and feel that it is absolutely a joy to do this with you. So are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let's do it. So who are you?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation to hold space with you. I'm a huge admirer of you and your work and the way in which you frame the work you do in community and the way that that has transpired to the museum and the kinds of programs and the exhibits that you hold there. So I am really, it is a joy and an honor to be here this morning. So thank you. Who am I? That's a tricky question because there's so many, if I think of myself as a river, there's so many tributaries to the river. And I think that we're all rivers. Each one of us is a river moving through our lives, right? And the river, maybe as we get older, it widens and it deepens as more tributaries come into it. But so it's a difficult question to define very simply because there's many things I do and have done in my life. I think a few years, there was a point in my life where I would have said, I'm a Salvadoran immigrant. And that continues to be true. I was born in El Salvador. I came to the US when I was 14 years old. Spanish is my native language. Buenos días a todos los que nos están escuchando. But as I have moved through life, I would say that I'm a mom. I'm a mother. I have 3 beautiful children who are now entering their adulthoods. And it is such an incredible thing to witness your babies blossom and make their way in the world. I admire my children very much. I never thought that, there were, I didn't raise my kids thinking or wishing that they would be like me. I thought of myself more as a caretaker of their own selves. And it's been really wonderful to see them thriving into, the people they're becoming, right? So that's just such a huge honor. So that's really present in my mind these days, my own motherhood. And of course, the fact that I am a daughter to, my parents who are both alive, thank God, and who taught me so much. There were teachers in El Salvador, and so I'm very conscious of my position in life or my standing on life or the space I occupy in the world as really being guided by who my parents are and who they nourish me to become. So I had, so I'm thinking, so in other words, I'm thinking here of ancestors, right? Of my mom and my dad, and of my abuelos and abuelas, who are all gone. My father's mother is to me more alive now than she ever was when she was alive.
Wow.
So over the over time, she's become such a presence for me, and it's a daily engagement with her, who really watches out for me and who really accompanies me and whose wisdom I tap into all the time, and she whispers to me. So that is absolutely, very, very present in my life. And I'm getting ready to go to El Salvador, and I am so excited to go because I get to go back to the house where she lived and actually died. And I get to stay in that house, and that house then is such a magical place for me. And um, it's such a huge, blessing, and in a way luxury, um, to be able to have a home. My ancestral home, the home that has been in my family's life for a long time, is still there. um, the many of the people I grew up with are still on the same block. They're still, the neighbors. And given all the destruction and wars that people are enduring right now, and have endured in the past, but we're watching wars unfold and the destruction of people's homes. And it is really a tremendous fortune for me to be able to go back to my house, and then to be in communion with my grandmother and my great grandmother and my great great grandmother, because my dad's family all hails from the same small town. So that is a really, an enormous thing. So who am I? I'm a blessed person to be able to have that joy in my life. Um, and of course, over the years, I've taught in elementary schools and high schools. I've taught at the university level, and I'm also a writer. And I think I left that for last when you asked me, who am I? Because there was a point in my life where I felt that I couldn't claim to be a writer and a poet. I'm a poet and I'm a writer. And there was a point in my life where it felt really strange to say that. It felt weird. It felt, yeah, this is the famous imposter syndrome, right? I felt like I didn't really have a right to claim being a writer. Um, and it always felt awkward, to say, oh, people would say, oh, so what do you do? Well, I'm a writer. Oh, well, sure, and I was afraid of that reaction, of that kind of disbelief from people. And, that's no longer the case. That's what I do. That's who I am. I write. And it doesn't really matter to me at this point whether people believe me or not, or feel awkward by that or not. You know what I mean? I have grown into that. It is what I am meant to be doing in my life. It took me a long time to arrive and find my way into words, or to claim the right to storytelling on paper, and to poetry making on paper. And I say on paper because our lives are poetry, right? Poetry exists whether we are aware of it or not. Poetry exists whether we write it or not. Poetry exists outside of ourselves. I look out the window and I see trees and birds. I was out earlier today, so many birds here. And, poetry is happening right now. I could be taking a nap and sleeping and I would not know it, but it is happening despite myself. And it is when we tune into that we then realize something as humans, when we tune into that poetry that exists. And then we eventually realize that we ourselves are poetry, and we ourselves make poetry. And, every minute of the day. So coming into that awareness and holding that awareness and writing into that awareness is what becoming a writer is and has been for me. And so, yeah, I'm a writer. I'm a writer who writes, both in Spanish and English. I'm also a reader. I read a lot because in order to write, you have to read a lot. And I love doing both things. Yeah, and again, I was talking to somebody over the weekend. I had an event, and I mentioned that I was coming here to Whidbey Island, and they said, "Well, you're very lucky." And I said, "I am very lucky, and that opportunity is like infinitely small, given all the other blessings and opportunities that I have had in my life." Um, you know, to be an immigrant to this country from a war-torn country as El Salvador was when I arrived because of the civil war there, and to become the poet laureate of a state of the union is an enormous thing. And it is a huge gap, it's like a tall order, in other words. And I'm just amazed that, that somehow I made that trajectory, right? And you never do things like that on your own. There's always people along the way, unseen and seen, who are helping you, right? I'm also very aware of that. It's not me, it's those around me, because we do things in community. So it's not just me claiming that, it's all of the people who helped me and made that possible for me.
Claudia, you got me thinking every single paragraph. I would like to make comment of that. I would like to make a comment of that. It's like I'm like full of comments right at this moment. But there's three things that I would like to address. One is that when you were talking about poetry and how you express it in just being in the space and developing that, that was the first thing I thought when you were introducing yourself in the first 5 minutes or so, because you were speaking in a way it was poetic, and the way you're talking, and I was like, no, she who you are is not a profession, it's just a being. It's not a title, is a light that you're shining through, and it's a way of expressing yourself. And so you're talking about the transition and how you have many people around you that helps you. Yeah, you are influenced by it, you are supported by it, you are around it with love and caring. But at the end of the day, it's also your light. Your light is very unique. They are not writers. They are not, even they might be some of it, but who you are is just you. I mean, even the way the colors you're wearing, you bring in this beautiful, light, colorful energy, and it's super fresh. And I love that. I love how you acknowledge your, what makes you you. And I've been asking this question to every person that's been doing an interview, and it's more than a year already. I cannot believe I've done that. So every single week I have presented somebody in, and everyone responds to that question so differently, and it's amazing. And then you approach it in a way that is not just you in the present, but your lineage, and in how that the lights that they've been passing on down to you, you are part of that. And then how everyone around you, you're part of it. And then where are you moving forward, which is, I know that you always have something going on, and the project or something will continue to extend that light. And so, no, it is a very beautiful and poetic way to describe yourself. And yes, the imposter syndrome, what is that? Is like when you don't have that part of you, that claim, that flag inside of you is like, this is me. I've been working with a lot of teenagers. Yesterday, I was with a class. Tomorrow, I'm going to be dealing with 40 kids, and and one of my favorite topics is about identity. And then one thing that I wanted to make sure that they know is that I'm not pretending to be white. I'm not pretending to be a male. I'm not pretending to be a father. I'm not pretending to be any of the titles out there. This is me, and take pride of who I am and what makes me me. And it's not just my ethnicity, my gender, or my age, or my motherhood, or being that. It's all of it. I'm just a piece of mosaic with many different aspects of me, and so many people around me supporting that. And so my message to the kids is just honor yourself, honor what makes you you. It's not about fitting into a mold, because a mold is not real. Your mold is just you, and you're unique into it. And so I love the way you introduce yourself. I love the work that you have. Well, we haven't not talked much about your work. We talk about you. It's just how you introducing yourself to the space. And it's just beautiful. I just want to acknowledge that. I know I'm taking a lot of time. This is your interview, but I just want to acknowledge this is beautiful the way you introduce yourself. So tell us more about anything. You are the one driving this conversation, and you can go any direction. Your work, personal, what makes you excited, why writing, why the need to do that. Go for it.
Yeah, I that's a really good question. Why writing and why the need to do that? Because in the end, I think is a need. And I think for me, it was always like since I was young, um, words were an interesting thing for me. Um, Maybe because I was a big reader when I was a kid, but there was something about being able to hold the language and being able to mold it back into something. I was aware of that as a kid, I mean, marginally aware of it. And I could see, and it was really hard to come and say, this is where this is leading, because who gets to be a writer, you know? I mean, that's a big, I think I would have become a writer a lot sooner in my life if I had writers like myself who were immigrant women from Central America who were learning to speak English and also writing. But there wasn't, when I was coming into that, has thankfully changed. We have a lot more stories of who we are as Latin people in the United States. But when I was, a young college student, there weren't that many. And so I sort of had to trace my own path into and because I think because of the world that we live in, because of the society that we live in, because it is a society that really doesn't that hasn't, because the possibility is there that it might in the future, and that it will. I will assert that for future generations. But at least in my lived experience in the United States, immigrants have always been vilified, Latin immigrants, and yeah, vilified. I mean, when I lived in California during Pete Wilson's, he was running for governor, and so it's been very difficult to see the value in our own lived experience. And I think I'm thinking about young people, and I think, when we first came to the US, my family struggled a lot. We lived in a series of apartments. We were in New Jersey where it was very cold, and from El Salvador, we were really freezing. We didn't have adequate heating. We didn't have adequate clothes. And all I could see then was the lack of the things I had, which were real, absolutely real, physical lack. And over time, of course, that was true, that we lived through a very precarious time. But at the same time, my parents were just such hard workers, and they kept us together. So, but we couldn't see that. I, as a young person, couldn't see all that my parents were doing for my sister and I. I couldn't see that we still sat down to dinner together, that we still cooked our food, that we took joy in trying to make tortillas tortillas the Salvadoran way and tamales the Salvadoran way in New Jersey. Those were really joyous times. And even with our lack of money to go buy the ingredients and to be together, That's a huge lesson. That's a huge lesson in resilience. I couldn't see the resilience. I couldn't see the love that was there that, that got us through, right? I could see it now in retrospect. I've written about it. So I think that awareness is so important. There's always two sides of the same coin, right? Yes, there was a lot of precarity. We were very poor. I've experienced pretty profound, poverty when my family came. And yet I went to school every day, because even in the snow, because my parents expected that of me, and yet I went to college when I graduated from high school, and yet there's many, and that's because of the love that was present in my family. So I think that there's always there was a Native American chief whom I've heard say there's always two sides of the coin. I can't remember. It was many years ago that I heard the interview on the radio, and I took that to heart. It's very hard to look at the side that is invisible because it's the one that's sustaining us, right? The thing that is keeping us alive, the love and the energy, all of that, we don't see it because we're standing on it. And she sort of was insisting, yes, she had been the victim of terrible domestic violence and became a lawyer. I wish I could remember her name. She's coming into my awareness right now, but her lesson really stood for me of, this idea of there's always two sides. And you were asking what I'm doing next year. My memoir will come out in the fall, which tells the story of my family leaving El Salvador during the war and me being a 14-year-old at that time, having witnessed war. And my sister was younger, so she didn't quite begin to question or understand all that we were living. So I think I was particularly impressionable, as young people are, right? And so my whole life I've been battling with those memories and those feelings that we endured, the fear, the paralyzing fear of living in a war, and knowing that family members and other people you loved were murdered. It's it's taking me a long time to sort of process that. And the book, the writing itself, has helped me become myself, if that makes sense. So that the writing, and I believe that anybody could write. I believe that everybody could write. I believe that everybody could write a poem. I've done it. People who said, no, I can't write a poem. An hour later in a workshop, when, I've done the workshop, they've written the most amazing thing and they surprise themselves. They don't surprise me because I already know that's a fact, but they surprise themselves. And so the writing of that book, I wanted to write that book to tell the story because I was a night witness to the war itself and to the beginning and the unfolding. And there aren't a lot of stories of young people from El Salvador telling that story. But there are many Salvadorans who have been born in the US, right, who don't know that story of why their ancestors came here. And so it was important for me, as somebody who lived through that time, to write a story so that it lives in our consciousness of what happened, right? And not only just for Salvadorans in the US, but for US citizens to understand how the US was involved in that war and how the displacement that we are living now, we see Salvadoran immigrants and Central American immigrants a lot. We're in the news a lot. But I don't think there's enough, nor there has ever been enough of a light shed on why that displacement happened. And that original why, it has to do with US intervention there. So I just think for me, Salvadoran history is also US history. So I feel like I'm contributing to the history of the United States by writing that book. And I'm really excited that it will be out, in the fall, next fall.
Well, there's and you're right. What is American history? And it is a very complex question because we are going to be, celebrating America 250 years next year in 2026, and we're already working on it. And what is that? It is really complex because there's not just repeating what you see on a book. It's about acknowledging the voices of the community, and that's the history on each one of those communities, and then what does that mean? And so is not as clean and cut, and just like in a textbook. It is way more complex than that, and so I'm glad that you are bringing that up. One thing that we don't have much time already. The time is passing by. We only got, probably 10 more minutes or so. But the one message that I would like to highlight of you too is inspiration. How you inspire other people. You inspire me in many different ways, and how through challenges, struggles, you can also be inspired by those elements, and how you can share that the light is bigger than the darkness, and there is more love than hate. And you're talking about the impact of your family and what makes you you. But I think it's not just the love, because you can love and you can love deeply, but what is attached to it is values, and the values that, what are the values in your family, the values of the American history, the values of a community. What is that important? And prioritize them and acknowledge them. And what I mean by that is, all the way from kindness, empathies to solid, to be able to help others and so on. And so there's all these different elements that allows us to be humans and do that. So your book is coming up next fall, but you, and right in the beginning, right, like in the first minute or so when you started to speak, you talk about trees.
Yeah.
And so I just want to share a comment. I went recently to see Chichen Itza, and so actually I was there a few days ago.
Oh,
Yeah, and so we're talking. I love archaeology and anthropology, and so we're talking about the meaning of a tree in a Mayan culture, and how the roots are connected to the underworld, and the canopy of the tree is connected to the heavens. But then you have the trunk of a tree, which is the person that is, it is the one that is interacting with both places, and the channel of that. And so it got my attention, and obviously the logo of the museum here is a tree. And
yes,
then the more I look around, is all the significance of a tree, and I even have a pendant. Anyway, trees. Tell me about what are there for you? Why trees?
yeah. I mean, I have been working, I'm teaching a class. It's coming up in, what is that? The 29th of April. I'm teaching an 8-week class at Hugo House on trees. And this is like the 5th year I've taught this class. I teach it every year. I became interested in trees a long time ago. Well, I lived with a father who was a gardener. So
Mm,
all my life I've had somebody who's been planting trees and flowers and vegetable gardens. That was our life in El Salvador before we left. And my dad, in every apartment building that we lived, he had to plant something. And it was often radishes, because radishes grow very easily and they don't take up a lot of space. But the need to put in seeds in the ground was so deep and profound for my dad, even in the bleakest of our time in the US. And so this plants have always been a companion for me. Always. They're always in my writing. As far back as I started writing, they show up as symbols or as metaphors, as similes. And it's in the last maybe 5 years that I started really thinking about them, because I cannot live in a place that doesn't have, I also garden myself, but and I need to be surrounded by them. I need to see them. I need their company and their presence. And I started thinking more focused on them because of the idea of silence, because silence is what helps us see the poetry of things, right? Is the awareness, the slowing down to see the world outside of ourselves, that allows us to be in community with the world around us, whether it's human or non-human world. And I got to thinking that trees were the teachers of silence. They communicate so much, and yet they don't verbalize as we do, or as other animals make noises, right? They don't do that. And so I became really engrossed in this idea of silence and what silence means in our lives. And to me, then the trees who exemplify that. And from there, then I started doing a lot of reading around them, this idea that they have been symbols both in the Bible and scriptures of all kinds of religions, as symbols to organize information, as like a tree of knowledge kind of thing. But also they show up in stories of origin, right? Origin stories, because of that idea that the roots they're both grounded in the earth and they reach for the heavens. So there is this polarity that is active in them. They're always active in that sense. And what can we learn about that for our own lives? So to me, they're profound teachers. The Celts thought of them as healers and sages. And in all cultures, really, trees. In Japan, there's sacred trees, right? In India, there's pilgrimage trees. People make pilgrimage to trees. In the Americas too, we have sacred trees. When you read the sacred texts of the Mayans, the role of flowers in their cosmology is enormous, So I'm really interested in exploring what can they teach us, all the things they can teach us, and all the things they give us, including oxygen. And in that exploration, also thinking about what do we give them? What do we do for them? And our life is so dependent and intricate to theirs, and yet I don't think there's enough awareness around that. So that's sort of what the class is about. I have a new manuscript of poems about trees that engages these questions, because I think they're just so central to who we are as humans. I mean, if you take a look, I'm sitting on a chair that is made of wood, on a table that is made of wood, in a house that is made of wood. You know what I mean? I mean, they physically make our lives possible. And I just don't think we recognize that enough. And so, yeah, that's my work. That's my work with trees. And like I said, I have this class. I'm going to be part of the faculty at the Coconut Writers Conference in Bellingham. And trees have become really central to my poetic exploration, my writing, and just my life in general. So yeah, I'll be sharing a lot around that.
I like how you connect many different natural elements into who you are and what makes you you. The trees, yes, tree of life. When you look at that and you see the different manifestations globally, and it's incredible. I actually did that once. I collected a list and I gave it to this very special person. I collected a list of all the trees of life and how it's represented globally. It is beautiful, the meaning and the spiritual element to it, but also how how you describe the trees, and then how you started also in the beginning when you were saying you're a river of water, and how, and it is something that I'm always using myself too, because I believe that my dad has this phrase that says, renew or die. And what he means is spiritually, is that if you put water in a container, it goes stale and it's a bad water. But if you are a constant river, you refreshing yourself, you growing, you moving, you exploring, you are still a fresh water, allowing everything. The moment you stop, the moment you don't allow the renewal inside of you, you just become stale inside. And so I like how you also end up in a very poetic way that you addressed it. It was great how you have those natural, and even your last name, oh my goodness, Luna, moon. And so your identity is interconnected with nature, and it is great. I love it. I love had the sensitivity of acknowledging all those elements. Another element, silence, for me is a little different. I'm 80% deaf, and so I grew up without hearing aids, and so I now was born like this. And so the idea of silence and how you interpret what's in front of you is very interesting. And so there's not that many people that actually sits down and address silence. So thank you for seeing these other layers of what that means, and because it is a magical planet out there. I mean, it truly is. When I'm unable to talk to people, or when I was unable to, or when I was able to, I was not able to even talk until I was 8. And so for 8 years of my life, it's just the idea of even understanding what is about me. It was just all through observation. And you're right when you say the stillness and how you receive all of it and how you interpret all of it. And so I don't know. I know that this is about you in a sense, but I would love to. Hopefully, we can have more opportunities to sit down, just you and me, and have either a cup of tea or a tequila. I don't know what you prefer, but I would love to sit down with you and really dive it into all these beautiful aspects of us being alive and being and challenging ourselves to become more us and take ownership of that identity, what makes us. So you got around 5 minutes. Any last thing that you would like to share? Something that you just like, okay, I would like to promote this, or do you have a website? Do you have some?
Yes, I do have a website, claudiacastroluna.com. And that has a list of, it doesn't have a calendar because I keep that more in Instagram. So Claudia Castro Luna is my Instagram tag. But yeah, you could learn more about me, and I will post all of the summer activities that I'm doing because I'm teaching at Chacanut, and I'm also teaching at Centrum in Port Townsend. There's a beautiful writers conference that happens there every year. And I'm a faculty member this year, and it's just an amazing. I encourage anybody who's curious about writing or would like to write, really check that out. It's really one of the best in the nation, I'd say. It's really wonderful. And we're lucky in Washington State to have a lot of opportunities. The Chacanut conference is also great. There's so many different opportunities, and of course the tree class. The last time I taught the tree class, I had somebody from Mexico join, from Mexico, because it's via Zoom, and I had a Canadian woman who was, because it's in the evening, for her, it was late, and she was up she had all this, covers because it was cold, it was winter, and she was, it was just, it's so fun to get all these perspectives. And this, just trees are showing up more and more in bookstores when you go, just different kinds, catalogs about trees and so on, because they are so important to our lives and to our livelihoods, even to our own existence, as they clean the air and produce oxygen for us. So yeah, we have a lot to learn from them.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I love how you facilitate those dialogues with people, and that I can see you're a very warm person. You're a really welcoming person. So I can see why would people like, I want to learn more about this. And so your class is in April 29, correct?
Yeah, it's an 8-week class through Hugo House, and I'll send the link to the class, and it's really fun, and I'm revamping it because of these ideas, these new ideas. Also discovering new writers in Latin America who are also taking on and writing about plants and the wisdom of plants. And they're not yet translated, but it's really wonderful that we have people across the world, people in India writing about, trees too. And so I hope there's a movement that is very generous and spontaneous from each of us to our, to our green t-shirts, and there's a lot there to learn in terms of, like you said, becoming yourself. Becoming yourself is not easy. Even when you know which way you should go, it is one of the most difficult things to do, to become oneself. And I think when I look at a tree fulfills its destiny, right? The tree, if it's a mango tree, the tree will become a mango tree and it will be a mango tree and it will fulfill that destiny. If it's a cedar, it will be a cedar. It won't try to be a mango tree. It's a cedar. There's this energy and purpose that is existent in trees to become themselves to the fullest way possible. To bear fruit, to reproduce, to carry out their mission, in the world. I think there's a lot to learn there, and the courage also to be undeterred in that way, because sometimes you see trees gnarled and growing in weird ways, but they are there. They are carrying out their mission. And I think that there is, like you said, how do you become yourself? How do you come into your being? Even when you have a sense that you must go in that direction, well, then how do you own that? There's a thing about owning ourselves. And I think once we do that, then we begin to be a little like trees, and that we could then move forward with a clear awareness of our mission and purpose. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Thank you. Gracias for this wonderful glimpse of who you are and the work that you do. Like as mentioned earlier, I do hope that people get curious, get like, okay, who is she? And then just really diving into. Don't be surprised. She has an amazing accomplishments list. So once you see in your bio, like, whoa, all the things that she's done. And I know that she will continue either professionally or even personally, because it's a growth journey that we all experience, and we all have different journeys and paths. But her path is very, very special, and I hope that people can get a little sense of that. And so thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Claudia, once again for this opportunity. And we'll see you soon again. Sounds good?
Yes, sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM.
We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. Our mission is we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highlines heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.